Welcome back to another video update from Streetsboro City Schools. I am Andreas Johansson, Director of Operations for the schools, and with me is Mike Daulbaugh, our Superintendent, and we're here to talk a little bit about the color coding that Portage County uses and how that will impact what happens in the school. So currently, Portage County is in orange. The levels above us would be red and purple, and then below would be yellow. And so we have a pretty comprehensive back-to-school safety plan that addresses how and what we will do in accordance with the different color codings from the county. So, Mike, why don't you tell us a little bit more about that, please?
So our plan, as Andres indicated, is based on that county color coding system. But it's important to note before we dive into this that just because the county is at a certain color does not automatically mean that we're going to jump from one form of instruction to another. We're just using that as a guide. So for example, when we are currently at orange, so when we are at yellow and orange, we are going to bring kids in 5 days a week. Our goal is to have kids in front of our staff in a safe way 5 days a week. And we do have lots of safety protocols in place, but that's for another video. So we are currently orange. And so we are planning September 1 to bring all of our students back 5 days a week. So if between now and then or any time during our return to school, if the county color designation were to go to red or purple, or I'm sorry, red, that would cause us to possibly move into what we call a hybrid form of instruction. And so what that would mean is if you're red, that means there's increased spread of the virus. So we want to then reduce the numbers of kids in the school system. So our hybrid model would look like we take our kids and we divide them in half, essentially in half, and we have a group A and a group B. A group A will come Monday and Tuesday. On Wednesday, we would have a digital day, basically for all kids out, so we could really do some deep cleaning in those buildings, give our teachers a chance to have some office hours, do some intervention. And then our group B students would come on a Thursday and Friday. So that's if we hit the color code of red, or we could be yellow or orange, and local conditions could dictate that we need to reduce numbers in our building. We could have an outbreak of viruses cases with our staff or within our students, or maybe within the city of Streetsboro, there are a lot of positive cases, but we're not seeing it necessarily in the schools. That could force us to go into a different model like the hybrid model.
But the local conditions then could be sort of, we have a local outbreak in the school district, but not necessarily Portage County. One of the things we've talked about is sort of staffing levels. It takes an enormous amount of staff to run school. And so if we just don't have that available, it might be that we switch to a different model because of that. Now, we talked a little bit about the red, purple, yellow. So red and purple would be sort of a public emergency. It would be a pretty drastic increase in cases in Portage County. What happens in terms of, and I know we've talked about this at the board meeting a little bit in the last couple of weeks, but if we move into the next phase, so say we go from sort of back to normal like we're planning now because we're in yellow, but we move into red or maybe even purple, so we go into hybrid or even into the remote setting, when would we come back from that?
That's a great question. And moving from these different models is very disruptive to the educational process. It's difficult for students to acclimate. It's also difficult for our staff to acclimate to that. But also, as you move to a more restrictive model where kids are at home, then that creates challenges for childcare. So recognizing all of those factors, we're not going to jump back and forth from these models. So once we're in a model, we're going to stay in that model unless the situation changes that we have to move to a more restrictive model. But my goal would be to keep us in the model that we're in until the next natural transition occurs. Let me give an example. So if we are full digital, the county went to red or purple, or red with the purple star, or purple, or local conditions, we had an outbreak, we had lots of folks getting sick, and we go full digital. We're going to stay full digital until maybe at the end of that 9 weeks, or maybe a Christmas break. But we need to have a natural break where we can have a few days to transition back to the next or the least restrictive model. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because we're making the assumption that it'll take some time to sort of back down. Now, in any of these models, right, Mike, like we're not, even with yellow coming, like it's still masks on, mandatory, like hand washing procedures, sanitize, like hand sanitizer, like we're still going to do all of that regardless of what model we're in.
Regardless of the model, we are going to be sanitizing hands, good hand hygiene at all times. You heard me talk about the phased approach, masks all the time, good hand hygiene, distancing and cleaning of surfaces. That's going to occur in every building, in every classroom at all transition times throughout the day. Masks will be worn at all times unless you have a medical excuse that says you don't wear one. We're going to be washing hands and hand sanitizing all day long. Kids are going to participate in the process at transition times, wiping down desks with Nutristat, which is a safe chemical for students, but it will kill the virus, or any virus actually, not just COVID-19, but strep throat, any of those types of flu viruses. Our cleaning, then when the kids are not in school, we've purchased 4 Clorox 360 machines to house one in each building. In addition, we've purchased 6 foggers, and between those pieces of equipment and our normal cleaning protocols that we already do, we are confident that we're going to keep our buildings as sanitized as we can.
And we're doing the same thing on the buses. So transportation wise, we're expecting that we're going to run the buses as normal, even in the hybrid. So if we go from sort of normal, like in yellow, to a hybrid schedule, we would run the buses very similar. It would just be less kids. And then in between, I think we shared this in a different video, but in between each bus run, we'll use the same chemicals in the bus. So that Nutristat, we're asking our bus drivers to sanitize the high touch areas, which is the top of the seats, near the window, and all the sort of stairwells and handrails, so that it's ready to go. Nutristat, very simple. I've seen it out in the buildings today. We were out earlier. There's bottles and bottles and bottles of it everywhere. It's a yellow color. It's something that we mix in-house. So we take from, sort of a gallon of concentrate, and then we can make a lot more. So it's something that we have on hand and that we're ready to go. And applying it's no problem. We just spray it on. And in some instances, we just let that sit. We don't even have to wipe it. We hope that that'll work, I guess. And then, Mike, let's talk about the most restricted, which would be the remote option. So the county goes to red or purple, or we have just a violent outbreak locally in the district. What is that going to look like?
So it's going to look very different than last year when we were forced to go into a remote model literally overnight. We've spent a lot of money from our CARES funding, also from our budget, and we've purchased one-to-one technology for all of our students and staff. We've also purchased a digital curriculum, and we're using these 14 days to have our staff prepare for that possibility of going fully remote. And we are going to have, the teachers are working on developing consistent guidelines, K-12, pre-K-12 actually, of expectations for attendance, expectations for classes, grading and reporting. What does assessment look like when you're in a full digital environment? What does teaching and learning look like? Because it does need to be a little different. It needs to be more engaging, but there's also going to be some individual work. Our experts, our teachers are working on that, and they're going to continue working on that. And I'm confident that they'll be ready to go. So it will not look like what it did last year. It's going to be much more structured. There's going to be expectations for our students, reporting, coming to class, participating in class, turning in homework, and participating in assessments. And so we're working all of that out right now.
And then it sounds like, I know we're doing, so we're working closely with Portage County health authorities, and we take guidance from all kinds of other places, ODE and the state of Ohio and whatnot. And so at some point then in that natural break, say we have a real decrease in COVID levels, we're going to look for that natural break to sort of step back down to a sort of a more normal model if that happens. This could happen overnight, Mike, to sort of increase, or the sort of to the more drastic model, right? It could be over a weekend that we send out an all call and say on Monday we're going to start remote learning, right? That's how fast it could go.
It could happen very fast. Again, my goal would be to give parents time to plan for it, but depending on the conditions that we have to make that decision, those conditions will drive how fast we have to make that decision.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't want to necessarily put a time on it. It's going to be as quick as possible, but also recognizing that our parents would have to make plans for their students if they're going to be at home.
Yeah. So lots to think about. Hey, thanks for your time today. Appreciate it.
I appreciate you running these videos and asking the questions. And I know that we plan on doing quite a bit more. And I would encourage people to go to our website and look at the plan. It changes every day. You'll see updates every day probably. And also Andreas has done a nice job with the FAQ, which is also on the website.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, so our website, scesrockets.org, is your #1 source for information. And if you have questions, let us know. Have a good day.